Welcome, everyone. We've had a fantastic week with our Impact Forum 2021. I'm Ligia Teixeira from the Centre for Homelessness Impact, and I'm back here to close off this year's forum. We've had a fantastic week, learning from one another, strengthening connections and building new relationships, finding out what works to end homelessness for good, committing ourselves to a movement that uses evidence, reason, and compassion to achieve this. And most importantly, listening to and amplifying the voices of people who have experienced homelessness. So to start our final session, let's look back on some highlights.
You don't change people's lives by helping them. You transform people's lives by asking them to help you.
All those other issues end up being reduced just by getting the person off the streets.
Compassion is the one biggest thing. It's a time when people are the most vulnerable in life as it is. I think a little kindness just goes a long, long way.
We need an evidence-based kindness program, please.
I think that there are issues that we need to address with the disability sector and with young single mothers.
If someone's experienced domestic abuse and they have no recourse to public funds, there's this period of time where they can't access a shelter.
Treating people as people rather than problems, but perhaps time and money would be better spent kind of ensuring our safety and wellness.
For support workers who have probably got the best intentions, but that's the paperwork and the processes that they have to run by, it should be about sort of building relationships first.
It should be a more complex system rather than labelling a person with complex needs.
Homelessness is a failure of multiple systems, and so it's going to take players from all of those systems at the table to create solutions that actually work.
We're not all starting at the same level. You can't treat rural areas like they're urban, and you can't treat deprived areas like they just haven't tried hard enough.
Data and evidence are absolutely heart of this approach. How I get resources out of my financial colleagues in the government is all about the data, what we can do, what we can use coming through. And you know, in the end, it's just about the culture that we want to have here in Wales, a socially just culture that doesn't kill our planet and make sure that our people are warm and safe in their own homes.
We're talking about people with hopes and aspirations, but we're also talking about a system. It's a cruel policy with devastating consequences for individuals.
Having a person-centered approach that starts with that person that you're trying to help, what matters to them, how can we help them to get there on their own terms. We're not doing things to them, we're doing things with them.
Homelessness should be as rare as possible, as short as possible, and recur as seldom as possible. We can only do this together.
Homeless people are just people, and everyone's so individual and everyone's needs are so different. There needs to be more of a plan based around people are individuals, because I think people are just sort of getting treated all the same. I think that's what is going to really help.
And now we need to strengthen the partnership that have been forged during the pandemic and move us that one step closer, not just to continue reducing rough sleeping, but to end it for good. And that work needs to be driven at all times by data and by evidence.
There is a stereotype for what a homeless person should be. I'm a young person, it's just a phase, go away, sort yourself out. I just didn't feel like I was taken seriously at all.
This dynamic problem must be met with a collective response, organized in a way that is very heavily about knowing people by name and having all the stakeholders working toward that common state of functional zero.
In 1945, after the Second World War, we did extraordinary things. Are we at another moment like that? And is homelessness perhaps an issue that can galvanise people?
Embarking on an ambitious and radical programme of building to change the face of social housing.
Homelessness is not a lifelong condition. It might be part of somebody's life story.
I just got myself a puppy. Who's driving me absolutely crazy.
What are all the links in the chain to make sure that you can end homelessness? And local authorities will be fundamentally important in this. So you do need to get them on board, and it would be a good idea if each of them had
their own target, but all mapped up together to make the national target. They might want to be even more ambitious.
Wasn't that great? Throughout the week, we've heard from some truly amazing speakers from a wide range of organizations and backgrounds, including at least 23 people with lived experiences, many of them brilliant younger people. Before I hand over to the other speakers with me this afternoon, I want to use this opportunity to say a few words on why collective resilience matters as we look ahead to 2022. The ability to bounce back from setbacks is often described as the difference between success and failure. Resilience, conventional thinking assumes, is something we find within ourselves alone, a kind of solitary internal grit. But I do not believe that's true. Resilience is not something we simply find deep down inside ourselves. We actually become more resilient in the process of connecting with others in our most challenging times. In short, resilience is a team sport. It's a community sport. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I am telling you this because all those actively engaged in building a healthy and just society face unique challenges that often take a deep personal toll to themselves and to others around them. Many work in highly stressful environments that don't allow for self-reflection or self-care. As a result, problems such as burnout, serious health issues, and breakdown in relationships are very common. While addressing these personal challenges is important in and of itself, there is also growing evidence that personal well-being lies at the heart of effectively addressing systemic social challenges like homelessness. Being a survivor of child abuse, few days go by when I don't think of one of the moments and people I met along the way that made it possible for me to be where I am today. What if my parents had been a little less financially stable? What if I hadn't found my table tennis family? What if I'd lost my home and not been able to rely on the kindness of strangers when I first came to the UK? On this day, when we're gathered together to celebrate collective resilience and look ahead, I want to try to persuade you that three things will be key to building collective resilience at this most challenging of times. First, doing what you love. Second, being brave. And third, acting on facts, not myths. So on the first of those points, doing what you love, on Monday, we heard Math Potts explain the importance of not trying to fix people. If you want to make a difference, ask them to help you. That certainly is what saved me. People asking for my help, helping others, being useful can lighten not only other people's burden, but also your own. So ask yourself, are you doing what you love? What is the unique value that you as an individual are bringing to this work, to this movement? Second, on being brave, I want to convince you that when it comes to complex social issues like homelessness, it is absolutely the right thing to try to do the impossible. Simply trying to do good or enjoying what you do is not enough. We have the responsibility to try to make the impossible possible. And that's something we can only do by making others successful, by building collective resilience, and by stepping into the unknown. And finally, we must act on evidence, not faith, and adopt an attitude of wisdom as opposed to an expert's attitude. Wisdom means acting with knowledge while doubting what you know, because knowledge is never perfect. It requires asking for help and asking questions, as well as giving help and answering questions. In short, I've tried to persuade you that as we look to 2022, those working or volunteering in this space must have the courage to consider our purpose, to put ourselves into as many unique and challenging circumstances as we can, proactively support others, and test assumptions along the way. The wisdom and insights we gain from those experiences will better enable us to add value to other people's lives as well as our own. And it will enable us to end homelessness for good. At the Center for Homelessness Impact, we know that there is no more powerful way of moving people, of capturing their imaginations and building connections than through the arts. Visual and performing arts are central to the mission of ending homelessness for good. So I am delighted that in our final session of Impact Forum 2021, we will share the power of poetry, the power of music, and the power of film. For our first performance, we will watch a digital performance of Frank Schubert's song, The Linden Tree, by Streetwise Opera, a performing arts charity that uses singing and creativity to inspire people recovering from homelessness. In the song, its mournful character reflects some of the personal trauma that Schubert himself was experiencing at the time, but it's also a song about strength and resilience.
I knew where I would find you, the tree I loved so well, my guardian, my companion, in heaven and in hell. It's far too dark to read them, the names I got so deep, but when those names betrayed me, it's here I came to leave. Tonight, though I ignored you, you stumbled blindly by, and even in the darkness, you closed a tearful eye, but still your knees were whispering. They sang a silent song. Come back to me and rest here, for here's where you belong. A bitter wind attacked me, my hat flew to the ground. I knew that you were calling, I did not turn And now you're miles behind
Wasn't that beautiful? Thank you so much, Streetwise Opera, for letting us show it. And now I'd like to introduce you to Chloe Deacon. Chloe joins us from Coventry and is a producer, advisor, filmmaker, and engagement specialist, and will also recite some poetry for us today. Thank you, Chloe.
Wow, thank you for having me. And can I just say, firstly, how amazing that opera piece was. It feels very weird to follow that up with some poetry, because that was absolutely outstanding. And I just wanted to say, as someone with lived experiences of homelessness, I think it's absolutely amazing what you're all doing. And I am in complete awe of all of your work and very grateful to be here today. So without further ado, I'm going to perform a poem which was inspired by many of the conversations I have had whilst working amongst those who are fighting to create collective resilience. Now, this poem speaks a lot about dreams and money, as we know within this space, that is a running theme that's either a barrier for us or something that really pushes our own work. So let's get started. What would your dreams be if money didn't exist? What would your ambitions be if you couldn't be rich? Are you bewitched by the bank, bewitched by your rank in society? Are your dreams drowning in anxiety? Are you drunk off capitalism, trying to find sobriety? Do the dimes control your dreams, or do you? Do you do what you want to do, or are you acting in an act which capitalism produced for you? What would your dreams be if money didn't exist? Untwist the mentality that your success has to be recognised by others to exist. Create your dreams around your standards. Become enamoured with your journey and how you have expanded. Because victory has demanded you, and only you, to come through and do what you need to do so that you can help those who have been through what you have been through. Because what would their dreams be if money didn't exist? We would have a network of change makers, rule breakers, dictators who dictate their own future, who are allowed to dream unapologetically, who set their goals around the collective's integrity. Because if you lose your integrity, next goes your humanity, then your sanity, and that's when people become obsessed with creating projects for vanity. When in reality, the gravity of the situation is they became obsessed with money, not life, not change making, not what is right. So I will ask again, what would your dreams be if money didn't exist? What would your ambitions be if you couldn't be rich? Now, I think that poem is really relevant for today because collective resilience needs to be focused on the dreams of the collective, regardless of their current resources. We need to enable collectives to unapologetically be blue sky thinkers, and their dreams need to be heard by people in power, funders, and organisations, and supported accordingly. This starts by rebuilding trust between collectives and creating healing infrastructures in which they can explore their hopes, dreams, and needs for the future. Thank you.
That was brilliant, Chloe. Thank you so much. You know, love all those themes. Exactly, rebuilding trust, less of a nurse and them culture is exactly what we need at this time and all times. But now I'll hand over to Matt Peacock and Mehdi Panahi. Matt is the founder and director of Arts and Homelessness International, and Mehdi is an Iranian business owner and political asylum seeker, and also very involved in a number of creative projects in the UK.
Hi, thank you so much, and congratulations, Chloe. That was absolutely awesome. What an amazing performance and poem. It's a privilege to be here to talk to you. As Liz just says, I'm Matt Peacock, a former homeless support worker at the Passage in London, founder of Streetwise Opera and Arts and Homelessness International, which is a global network of arts and homelessness, where 50% of our board and staff are people who are or have been homeless. And since that time, 20 years ago, when I was a support worker, I've seen how homelessness was never just about housing. And residents who I work with wanted more than a roof and their pastoral needs met. They wanted to believe in themselves, show other people what they could do, and do something that showed their achievements rather than their needs. And over the years, we've seen a professionalization of the arts and homelessness sectors from the founding fathers of Cardboard Citizens and others in this country. And our Arts and Homelessness International Network is now 500 strong, from dance companies in Tokyo who meet and rehearse in parks, to Shakespeare companies in Johannesburg with people who are living on the streets, and trans poet collectives in Buenos Aires. I think also we've got better as a sector in understanding the role of arts in homelessness and measuring its impact. And there's growing evidence that with multiple needs, people need multiple solutions, especially when statistics around well-being are so low. We co-created a new model of homeless support in Manchester with homeless people. And what they came up with is, instead of the sort of Maslowian idea of this kind of triangle of needs where there's where you build on pastoral needs, food and healthcare and so forth, and move up the chain until you reach culture. They wanted a sort of jigsaw where from day one on being homeless, they said that they needed community and love and ways to build positive distractions and well-being. They said they needed to thrive and not survive. So our jigsaw of homeless support, which I'll put in the chat, is now used by a lot of NGOs around the world and local authorities, and as a model of best practice with the UN, who want to adopt this area of holistic support in homelessness. An artist and activist, David Tovey, who's our creative producer, spoke at the beginning of this week and mentioned about our international research project as well, which is showing, it's the first research project around the world on arts and homelessness. And from 60 evaluation studies that we found about the impacts of arts and homelessness, there were 4 key elements, which really chimes with today's theme. So all projects demonstrated increases for participants around well-being, agency, skills, and resilience. And we're seeing that arts and creativity shows us what is, in a sense, strong about us, not wrong. And it enables us to adopt a positive identity, positive routines, and meet other people who become friends in our support network, which is the core of resilience. I believe that we need to normalize and mainstream arts in the homeless sector, as many centres have done around the country and around the world. And also, as has been said many times today, ride that wave of co-creation, working with people, not for them. We believe the best way to do that is to make change at local authority level and to hardwire change into policy. So we're working with a number of local authorities from Coventry, Haringey, Medway, to embed a system of policy co-creation with homeless people using artistic techniques such as legislative theatre to make that change. And then on top of that, to make sure that arts and creativity and sports and other positive activities are, in a sense, normalised in the support of people who've experienced homelessness. So that's my rather long introduction to the main event, which is my great friend and collaborator, Dr. Mehdi Panahi, who actually you saw on the Streetwise film. And we met during COVID-19 when we were doing an evaluation study on arts in hotels in COVID-19. And many hotels were adopting arts and were reaching out to try and find ways to help residents be more creative and to mitigate boredom. And some outstanding examples in Coventry, in Haringey, and in St Mungo's hostels as well. And Mehdi was on our research panel and delighted us most weeks by singing Iranian songs to us. And I sort of think that every single meeting should have creativity in it, particularly if you work in creativity. Mehdi is an extraordinary person, and I think has really demonstrated in a very quiet, strong way the resilience that he has, and some of which has come from his love and incredible excellence in arts. So I leave you with Dr. Mehdi Panahi singing 2 Iranian songs.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Matt, for your lovely book. Here we go. یه دل میگه برم برم، یه دلم میگه نرم نرم، طاقت نداره دلم دلم، بی تو چه کنم؟ پیش عشقی زیبا زیبا خیلی کوچیکه دنیا دنیا، با یاد تو ام هر شب هر جا ترکت نکنم. سلطان قلبم تو هستی تو هستی، دروازه های دلم را شکستی، پیمان یاری به قلبم تو بستی، با من پیوستی. اکنون اگر از تو دورم به هر جا، بر یار دیگر نبندم دلم را، سرشارم از آرزو و تمنای یار زیبا. یه دل میگه برم برم، یه دلم میگه نرم نرم، طاقت نداره دلم دلم، بی تو چه کنم؟ پیش عشقی زیبا زیبا خیلی کوچیکه دنیا دنیا، با یاد تو ام هر شب هر جا ترکت نکنم. یه شب یه روز یه ماه یه سال یه عمره که میگردم بد تو، چو کبوتر بی پر و بال میرم همه جا. یه روز دیدم گم شد جونم، دور افتادم از آشیونم، بی خونه مونم سرگردونم ویرون به خدا. سلطان قلبم کجایی کجایی، رفتی که بر من به شادی نمایی، دروازه های بهشت خدایی، اما صد افسوس رفتی و برد از کفم زندگانی، عشق و امید مرا در جوانی، رفتی که قدرم ندانی ندانی، قدرم ندانی.
That was brilliant. And
second one. گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم مثل آفتاب اگه بر من نتابی سردم و بیرنگم گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم مثل آفتاب اگه بر من نتابی سردم و بیرنگم همه آهم همه دردم مثل توفان دور گردم همه آهم همه دردم مثل توفان دور گردم باد مستم که تو صحرا میپیچم دور تو میگردم گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم مثل آفتاب اگه بر من نتابی سردم و بیرنگم مثل بارون اگه نباری خبر از حال من نداری بی تو پر میشم دو روزه دل سنگت برام میسوزه گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم مثل بارون اگه نباری خبر از حال من نداری بی تو پر میشم دو روزه دل سنگت برام میسوزه گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم گل سنگم چی بگم از دل تنگم مثل آفتاب اگه بر من نتابی سردم و بیرنگم
That was amazing, Mehdi, and I'm sure you're actually dancing at home. No, thank you so much. And can you tell us a little bit about the songs you sang? What were you saying? We don't understand Iranian. I imagine most of us listening in.
Thank you very much to give me this opportunity to do these two performances. The first song is about the love. And the second, it's about it is one happy song and talking about the flower and the sun and the efficiency of these things in our lives.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Mehdi, again.
Thank you very much.
And now I'll ask just a few questions, I guess. So, Chloe, I'm really interested as to how you came across poetry and what it means to you. Maybe let's ask Mehdi that first before Chloe rejoins us. Mehdi, in terms of the singing, what's why do you like singing, and what has it meant as as an asylum seeker in this country?
I think we use music, actually music therapy, for 4 kinds of illness: intellectual, social, emotional, and physical. And I think efficiency of music and arts is a big in our mental health and well-being as well. And in my experience, it works. So I choose music and some arts, and some, I think, some sports for my well-being and healthy and mental health as well. And I highly recommend to everybody to take one of these.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And Matt, I think it's quite clear the power of the arts for all of us, any human beings when recovering from trauma. What would you say, though, is the role of the arts in preventing people from becoming homeless? Is there a role at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few studies about this, particularly in the US. And I think it really boils down to a number of key features which come out, which is about belonging to something and an identity. There was a conference recently around criminal justice about positive groups instead of negative groups that young people might join. Art, sports, these are activities which enable you to join something where you're with like-minded people, you're with people who become your friends and your support network. This is why boxing groups are absolutely brilliant in gang communities. And I think it's the same for so many social outcome groups. And because of COVID now, quite a lot of those social outcome groups are getting together. And there's a lot of dots to be joined from all of these groups, whether you're working in criminal justice or with in aging or in disability awareness. Arts can heal, of course. It's a human right, Article 27 of the UN Charter of Human Rights, and it's also, as you say, effective in prevention if we can enable people to access this, to replace some toxic communities with some really positive ones and build well-being.
Thank you, Matt and Chloe. Welcome back. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about your story. When did you start writing poetry, and how do you find it helpful? Why does it work for you?
Yeah, so I started writing poetry when I was about 8 years old. So that was around the time that I first experienced homelessness, and actually how it really helped me as a young person was when I couldn't afford to, access Wi-Fi or TV or like other entertainment, I was able to create my own stories in ways which were really accessible. And another thing which poetry really helped with is I've got a learning disability, so I'm also neurodiverse, and accessing your stereotypical story writing comes with so many rules. You've got to build the story up and use certain connectives and write in a certain way so that you could be classed as like a writer, whereas in poetry and spoken word, like, it's a free for all. So I think it really it's one of those activities which is something that those who experience homelessness and other kind of struggles can really easily access, and it does really enable you to kind of tell your story in ways in which you are comfortable with, I'd say.
No, I can definitely see that. And how do you use your poetry now, I guess, to stay well and talk about the things that matter to you and for social change in particular?
Yeah, so actually, I don't really use it too much like throughout, like externally. Like, so today was the first time that I ever did a poetry performance. And I've ever only actually put out one piece. So I wouldn't say my kind of external work uses poetry at all. Normally when I'm working in communities, I'm producing programs, leading different training schemes, working with organisations on their policy. And my poetry has been something that throughout the years I've kept very kind of like sacred. However, I hope going forward that I can use my poetry to share a bit more about my story and my views and really help people through difficult times.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Matt, What art do you actually enjoy the most? I don't think I've ever asked you that. So.
Well, I used to be a fairly bad singer, and did that for a little while. And it's funny actually, because I think one of the things is that behind all of us, there's, you know, an artist trying to get out in some ways. And when we were, you know, very young, all language, I guess, is quite artistic. It's like dance and singing and, you know, doing crazy things, drawing. And that sometimes is replaced with like the more important stuff. But I've just reflected so much over a couple of decades of meeting so many support workers who are a bit skeptical about arts, but then you find out that they're like a guitarist or something and they love arts in their spare time. And I think we need to be a bit bolder in embracing this thing, which is quite hard to sometimes measure. And it can seem a little bit, you know, like an add-on or a bit fluffy sometimes, but it's actually core to who we are. And I suppose in any crisis, if you look back in history, arts activists and academics are always the ones that come out with innovation, and this is happening now in arts. So it's almost like when worse things happen, we look back on the things that make us feel human.
And actually, on that note, Maddie, when you came to this country, you know, I'm assuming that you weren't always able to I suppose, access activities like this. And I'm just reflecting on what that must have meant to you, you know, being able to start doing your singing and connecting with others.
Actually, I've been in a lot of countries, and music was a connection between me with the new culture, and I can sing in 27 different languages. I start learning piano when I was just three years old, and I was in many performances. So I think yes, now after I passed 40 years, I think this is a very good way to find friends, healthy, and better life. And I never expect to do some participating in an event like this. And thank you very much to give me this opportunity. And thank you for having me. And thank you, Matt, for everything you have done for me.
And thinking about, you know, your past life, Matt, at the Passage, obviously a very well-known institution in London, doing fantastic work, very difficult work. What would you say can be done to help people on the front line engage more with the arts as a way of putting things in perspective, I guess, but not just relieving stress, it's about perspective as well?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think so much can be done quite easily with a few tools and a bit of confidence. And I think training is actually sort of 99% confidence building. So you don't have to be a red hot artist to run arts programs in a centre. You can do, you know, a mobile library, which the idea we built up from a Cardboard Citizens idea during COVID, and that's spread a bit with donated books going into lots of hotels. There's some very easy things to achieve. We have training programs, we've got some resources on our website. So I think it does take a little bit of confidence. And the spin-off is that, you know, some of the COVID hotels and places that we've been in, when arts is there, the atmosphere improves in the centre, staff morale is better, there are fewer staff illnesses, and it's really hard, I guess, you know, job day to day in the front line. And it helps sometimes having a little bit of hope, a little bit of lightness. And so we're not just concentrating on the dark stuff, the problems, but there's also some hope as well. And crucial to this is that, you know, I'm a product of 20 years ago, you know, white, middle-aged, privileged man who was working in this way, very kind of, you know, transactional, one way, and art sort of unlocks that. So you ask people what their thoughts are and what their ideas are, not just, can I help you with your housing benefit form? So that, I think there's a connection between creativity and about co-creation as well, because it gives people permission to have agency and to have their own ideas heard. And then once that idea is heard, they have more confidence to have their own ideas. So gloriously will be a thing of the past, but in the future, I think art and co-creation will be much more present.
Thank you. And there's a question that loads of people asked throughout the week, and I wonder if all of you could really say something about it. What would you change about the homelessness system or services? Who would like? Chloe, would you like to start?
Yeah, so one thing I'd change is, the connection from those who are funding and, decision makers and policy makers, and those who are actually homeless. So I don't think there's many kind of programs in which, direct funders to the charity sector actually spend days and weeks with those who are experiencing homelessness. And I think when that happens, that disconnect essentially means that funding isn't being put in the right places to support the communities that are actually homeless. And then also it makes it essentially, for those who are homeless, it makes it feel as if starting a charity, getting into funding, starting a social enterprise is completely unavailable to them, or actually it is one of the only career paths where, regardless of your qualifications, your abilities, as long as you have the right kind of support, you can start an enterprise and be successful. So I would really say I would change that. I'd get the funders and decision makers not just in the room for pictures, but in the room to spend a few days and actually, really support and speak to those who are homeless.
Thank you, Chloe. Mehdi, what about you? What would you change?
I like to make a leaflet, and it's accessible for all the homeless, and all the creativity is divided to different groups, and they can involve to each one of them, and maybe we can have a store to sell some of their activities, some of their performance, as some poems, some maybe paintings, and I've seen some of them, they made some good stuff in different type of creativities.
Thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, I really agree with both Chloe and Mehdi, and I think fair payment is also really important for people who are performing like today, and many other organizations are doing the same thing, so there are more employment opportunities. Homeless Link are doing more of these kind of events where, Mehdi has performed on one of the Homeless Link conferences as well. For me, it all goes back to co-creation, and as Chloe said, that for me begins and ends with policy. So currently working in local authorities and helping them to get more confident in working with people, not for them, and normalizing co-creation structures where, why isn't there a place for someone who's homeless every single homeless meeting? So all of those policies are co-created from design to delivery. And that's where real change will come from, because that will trickle down into everyday life from local policy downwards. I tend to forget about national policy because it's a sort of thing on its own in some ways, but hyperlocal has always demonstrated, I think that's where quite a lot of the change comes from. And there's so many activists who work in local authorities who are really keen for this change towards co-creation.
Completely. The co-creation, ensuring involvement is not tokenistic, but it's actually a meeting of equals and listening to one another, and also looking at the data and evidence, because sometimes the things we think are true simply aren't, and you need to test your assumptions. But another question that's come up a few times is, this idea that sometimes it's easier to build connections when you're amongst people similar to you, But then, whether, if you're in a hostel, whether that's always a positive thing, and what might be the role in arts of, I suppose, adding to diversity of people's networks. Who would like to take that one? Chloe, back to you, perhaps.
Yeah, so do you mean diversity in the networks of the workers in the sector?
No, I think everyone trying to do something, either recovering from trauma or working or volunteering as well in this space.
Okay, so I suppose it's quite a simple one. It's just about hiring and paying people from different backgrounds. There's amazing people with lived experience of homelessness and trauma, who come from, a multitude of backgrounds, whether that be race, gender, sexuality, location, who are just waiting for, the perfect organisation to say, we are looking to hire someone, and actually, we'll support them into the role. And from kind of an engagement background, because obviously that's a part of what I do, what I've done over the years. A really big part to play in that is the marketing of opportunities. If, for example, everyone within your organisation is above the age of 30 and you are doing a job call out, but you're only putting it on Facebook, under 30-year-olds normally only use Instagram, Snapchat, and, occasionally Twitter if they're above the age of 26. So that kind of diversity piece also comes in the marketing and how are you actually getting those people through the door. And that just comes from, again, like I said earlier, walking with the people, communicating with them, seeing what they like, what they don't like, and what they're into. And then, yeah, so that's what I say to do with that.
That's a very well thought through plan, and very quickly. So thank you so much for that. Mandy.
Yes, I agree with Cole. Thank you very much. And I think we should find a way to homeless people trust us to come and join with us, because it's hard. I can see some of them, they are so talented, but they don't believe some organization. We should find a way that, because I think it doesn't relate it. What is your ethnicity? What languages can you speak? Because something in all over the world, like a music language, is an international language. Everyone can understand happiness, sadness, fear, or some stuff like this. I think we should find a way that they can find a better way to find us, to trust us, and joining with us.
The beautiful thoughts. Matt.
Yeah, I really agree with this sort of recalibrating recruitment. And half of our staff are homeless or ex-homeless people, and I think it's about just changing the way that we expect things that just aren't necessarily needed. I've worked with people who've got like a double first from Oxford and people who've got really low literacy levels, and a lot of jobs are about experience, and it's not about experience, about doing it, the experience you have doing the job. You really don't need a lot of things that people say you need. And absolutely with Chloe about the recruitment channels as well. You're not going to, you need to reach people who would be interested in this and have the confidence to apply, and then have a really great structure around, which isn't about necessarily turning up, with your game face on every day. And it's okay to be flexible, and it's okay we all need support. We've got a trauma counsellor on our freelance trauma counsellor on our staff for everyone, me especially. And it's that kind of structure of work in a co-created way is something we haven't figured out 100%, but we're on the way there to getting better. Support, patience, flexibility, and assuming that people have incredible skills rather than wanting them to get up to a different level. They already are at that level.
And what about the role of the arts in challenging stereotypes and helping the public see homelessness and people affected by homelessness in a new way? What is working and what more could be done, would you say? Chloe?
I think, you know, what's working is like organisations like Streetwise Opera, where opera is something which, you know, a lot of people who are middle class and don't experience homelessness much would engage with. I just assume that they look at Streetwise Opera and what they do and essentially are able to see, you know, homeless people's stories, but not only that, they get to understand that they're running the organisation, you know, having a big part to play in kind of what's in front of them. So I think firstly, you know, organisations like yourselves are a huge part in how the arts can essentially bring people together to understand homelessness. And I also I feel like it really starts at a school level as well. If facilitators and drama practitioners can go into primary schools and, you know, do workshops and interactive performances about homelessness, it means that those young people can grow up and, you know, they can understand the concept, and those stereotypes are essentially challenged in their head before they even have the chance to form. And that's how I think you know, we'll really build a generation of young people who care and want to support, you know, homelessness collectively. So yeah, I think it's that two-pronged approach of like really pushing organisations like Streetwise Opera, who are doing it and doing it amazingly, but also, you know, getting people into schools, helping those children and young people to understand homelessness and be able to help the issue, really.
Mehdi, does that resonate with you?
Yes, I agree with Cole, and that's very true.
Yeah, and really, Matt, is this something that you're thinking about, would like to do? What else is missing, and you're really hoping to get there in the year ahead?
Yeah, a lot of the issues that we've seen over the last 24 months, including with Black Lives Matter, is an unequal split of power. And I think in homelessness, this has always been the case, where there have been too many people like me leading organizations. And when the Black Lives Matter movement happened, it was really clear that action was needed. That was the kind of key thing. You know, what are you going to do to change the situation that has got really toxic, where there's no Black people on boards and there's, you know, inequality. So if more, in the same way, if more homeless organizations can take that leap, and, you know, I will step out of my role and it will be transitioned to someone who's got lived experience, because that is what's needed. And I think sometimes it just takes, again, a little bit of confidence to go, yeah, well, maybe we can do it as well. And there are some brilliant organizations already fully co-created in the homelessness sector. And the more that happens, the greater the momentum there will be. And so it just normalizes the fact that we're not working for people, we're working with in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, all of you and people listening. We're going to have to close off this event, and I wanted to start with a very personal debt of gratitude to you, to this community and to this movement. And thank you for building it, for developing it, and for having invented it, and for supporting us for the past year. And finally, to my fantastic team for making today possible, this week possible, in fact. A shout out to Amber, Greg, and Hannah in particular. I am nearly finished, but I have one last hope for you, that you go forth, stay focused and humble, make others successful, and allow others to support you. So thank you all for making better things closer till we meet again.